The Rules Committee will come to order. We increasingly live in a digital world, but there is no replacing the United States Postal Service. It provides millions of people with access to life-saving prescription drugs, processes an astounding 5,000 pieces of mail every second, and helps many Americans vote safely during the coronavirus pandemic. And as we speak, millions of households are getting their free COVID test through the Postal Service, which goes the last mile that other carriers simply don't go. For anyone who thinks the Postal Service is some relic of the past, consider this. 1 million new delivery points are being added each year. We need a strong and reliable USPS today more than ever. That's why we are considering HR 3076 today. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill that addresses the financial needs of the Postal Service so we can continue to rely on it for generations to come. It does all of this while making critical transparency reforms and requiring the delivery stays at 6 days a week. This legislation not only has the support of stakeholders, including the American Postal Workers Union, the National Association of Letter Carriers, the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, and the National Rural Letter Carriers Association, collectively representing 650,000 postal employees and retirees. It has the support of Democrats and Republicans in Congress, too. This bill is something that should pass quickly on a bipartisan basis, and I hope it does. Now let me turn to our ranking member for any comments he wishes to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Our hearing today covers a single item, H.R. 3076, the Postal Service Reform Act of 2022. Today's bill is intended to place the U.S. Postal Service on more secure financial footing, ensuring the Postal Service will still be around for decades to come. Rural districts like my own are deeply reliant on the Postal Service, from delivering prescriptions to circulating community newspapers to delivering Christmas cards and letters from loved ones. The Postal Service serves every one of our constituents on a near daily basis. The bill before us was the subject of bipartisan negotiations between Chairwoman Maloney and Ranking Member Comer. I want to applaud them for the discussions that they had in good faith that resulted in putting this bill together. Though we all know there's no such thing as a perfect bill, and neither side ever gets everything that they want in a negotiation, their work is a strong indicator that the resulting bill is a good compromise. I look forward to a full and robust discussion today. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I yield back.
Well, thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. I'd like to welcome our witnesses to provide testimony on HR 3076, the Postal Reform Act of 2022. Chairwoman Maloney and Ranking Member Comer, we're delighted that you are here. And let me again echo the words of Mr. Cole when I say thank you very much for your hard work in getting us to this point. We all appreciate it. I now recognize the gentlewoman from New York, Chairwoman Maloney.
Thank you. I was just getting a phone call. Thank you so much, Chairman McGovern and Ranking Member Cole and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting us to testify today before you on this incredibly important legislation. The Postal Service Reform Act has been years in the making, and I'm very proud to say that it is strongly bipartisan. This bill is an agreement bill. It is an agreement that was reached between the Democrats and the Republicans on the Committee on Oversight and Reform, the Postal Service professionals, the postal unions, and numerous other agency and private sector stakeholders. No one got everything that they wanted in this bill, but both Ranking Member and I both share a desire, first and foremost, to ensure that the Postal Service will continue to serve the American public on a firmer financial basis. And that's what this bill does. I also want to highlight an important point. According to the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, this bill actually reduces federal spending by nearly $1.5 billion over 10 years. We have been working closely with our Senate counterparts And if the bill passes the House, we expect the Senate to take up the bill in short order. As we all know, the Postal Service is one of our nation's most vital and respected institutions. It is even in our Constitution, in Section 8, to establish post offices and post roads in our Constitution. And it provides services across this country to every single address, whether you're an urban skyscraper or a rural family farm. Everyone gets their mail. And it adds over 1 million new delivery points every year. It binds our nation together in a way that no other agency or organization does. In May of 2021, we held a draft on this reform legislation. While the bill has changed to ensure bipartisan support and to perfect the Medicare integration section, those are the only changes that took place. And this bill will save the Postal Service nearly $50 billion, as in B, over 10 years. First, the bill would eliminate the unfair requirement that the Postal Service pre-fund its retiree health benefits for 75 years into the future. A similar bill, the USPS Fairness Act, passed the House overwhelmingly 2 years ago, but died in the Senate. No private company or federal agency is required to comply with such a burdensome and unfair pre-funding requirement. Instead of requiring the Postal Service to pre-fund retiree health benefits for all current employees and retirees, the bill would require the Postal Service to pay a small yearly top-up payment to cover the actual cost incurred by retirees in that year only. This change will help reduce the burden on the Retiree Health Benefit Fund and help it remain solvent. Secondly, this bill would require postal employees to enroll in Medicare when they are eligible to retire. All postal employees already pay into Medicare throughout their careers, but not all retirees enroll when they reach 65. The Postal Service employees have paid about $35 billion into the program since 1983, and it is the second largest contributor to the Medicare Trust Fund. The bill would ensure that Postal Service employees can fully utilize the benefits that they've already paid for. In addition to ensuring fairness, those who are already over 65 would be given a 3-month period to enroll in Medicare with no penalty. Again, I want to emphasize that this change does not cost taxpayers one dime because these individuals have already paid for these benefits. In addition to these foundational reforms, this bill would provide Congress and the American people with additional transparency. That includes requiring the Postal Service to develop an online public-facing database that shows weekly service performance information. This was a great idea offered by Ranking Member Comer, so we can track where we need to invest in better service. This will help the Congress, the public, and the Postal Service more quickly and efficiently react to any future dips in performance. It also requires the Postal Service to deliver the mail 6 days per week, even Saturday, a critical requirement to ensure all Americans get their mail and medications even on weekends. In addition, the bill allows the Postal Service to increase revenue by contracting with state, local, and governments to provide non-postal service such as fishing and hunting licenses. This will help the Postal Service create new revenue that will further increase their ability to stay solvent for years to come. The bill also enables local newspapers to ship a greater number of papers to possible subscribers at a beneficial rate. This will help local news organizations further their circulation in a responsible and affordable way. I want to thank Ranking Member Comer for being a true partner and working so diligently with me and other members of the committee over many months to put this bill together. I would like to especially thank Representatives Conley, Lynch, Lawrence, and Fox for their partnership and dedication to getting this bill done. We could not have done this without their support, their wisdom, and their insight. And I would like to thank the dedicated professionals of the Committee on Oversight and Reform, particularly Mark Stevenson and Ethan Van Ness and Russ Anello for their dedication and commitment to getting this bill to the point it is today. I hope that this bill will merit your support. We've worked hard on it. I think it will make a tremendous improvement into the Postal Service. We all know how important it is after the COVID crisis we are still enduring. I thank you and I yield back.
Thank you very much. I'm now delighted to acknowledge Ranking Member Comer for any remarks he wishes to make.
Thank you, Chairman McGovern, Ranking Member Cole, and members of the Rules Committee. I want to thank you for holding this hearing today to discuss the Postal Reform Act of 2021. 18 months ago, I made my first visit to the Rules Committee as ranking member of the House Oversight and Reform Committee to discuss a different postal bill. That time, Chairwoman Maloney and I were very much at odds, but not now. Over the past year and a half, we have worked closely to craft a postal reform bill upon which we both agree. And I would like to thank her for her sincere offer to tackle this together. And we have worked together on this all the way. The Postal Service is in grave financial condition. Its business model, based on first-class mail, was completely disrupted almost immediately after Congress passed the last postal reform bill. And if that business model is a relic of the past, so is the statutory framework under which it operates. Both must change. The Postal Service operates under a profit and loss model, like a business, but is uniquely saddled by two burdens under which no business could survive. The first, pre-funding retiree health benefits, was conceived of to offset excess money the Postal Service had paid into the pension fund. This shows you just how much times have changed. In 2006, Congress had to think of ways for the post office to spend money. We do not have that problem anymore. The Postal Service has not made any pre-funding payments since 2011, so over 10 years, but the requirement remains. Doing away with the pre-funding requirement is not a bailout. The second burden is the fact the Postal Service must shoulder excess costs for its retirees that do not enroll in Medicare. They are eligible to enroll. They have paid into their entire careers, but they just don't do it. And while other businesses have the option of only offering supplemental coverage, the Postal Service does not. It must remain the primary payer, which increases its cost. Our bill addresses this problem by requiring future postal retirees to enroll in Medicare. And it does so in a way that will lead to decreased premiums for both current federal employees and current postal employees. Together, these two legislative provisions are projected to save the Postal Service about $50 billion over a 10-year time frame once the bill's reforms go fully into effect. When we began work last year on this bill, I told Chairwoman Maloney, in addition to removing statutory obstacles, there had to be real business reform. And our bill takes steps to hold the current Postmaster General, our bill helps the current Postmaster General implement his ambitious agenda to reform the Postal Service's business and model and operations. We require the Postal Service to prioritize a more cost-effective transportation network that reduces complexity. Rather than look for ways to reduce services, as previous reform efforts have done, our bill codifies 6-day delivery for mail and packages, which gives American businesses and the mailing industry full confidence in using the post office. We require the Postal Service to continually report on its current reforms as it makes operational changes to its delivery network, offers new service offerings, and makes targeted infrastructure investments. To be sure, there's a lot riding on the Postmaster General and his ability to deliver, but it was always going to take a business-minded leader to truly fix the Postal Service. We cannot legislate good business practices and future success. The tools we have would be cutting or making the Postal Service an appropriated agency again. Neither are acceptable options. In closing, Chairwoman Maloney and I have presented a right-sized solution to the Postal Service's challenges. Our bill is not a bailout. In fact, it saves money, according to the CBO. I'm thankful for Chairwoman Maloney and all the Republican and Democrat co-sponsors of the bill for their support. I look forward to answering your questions, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate both of your testimonies. I want to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a statement of administration policy, which the first sentence is the administration supports House passage of HR 3076, the Postal Service Reform Act of 2022. And it says the administration supports these efforts to improve accountability, reliability, and transparency at the post office. So I don't have any questions. I'm happy to yield to the gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of quick questions, but I want to begin by again join you and applaud Chairwoman Maloney and Ranking Member Comer for the process which has gotten us to this point on what's really an important piece of legislation. I am so pleased that it's been such a good and productive bipartisan negotiation, and both of you are to be commended for your efforts, I think, in this work product, and as are your counterparts in the Senate, who I know you've worked closely with as well. In section 201, the bill requires the post office, postal services to publish granular geographic and timely performance data, meaning that my constituents in rural Oklahoma and many of your constituents as well would actually be able to search for their address and see the weekly performance data for their street. I think that is fantastic. Really a tremendous addition to the capability of people to understand what's going on with a system that they depend so deeply on. Just out of curiosity, how long, and I asked this to both the chairwoman and the ranking member, how long would you expect the implementation of this public dashboard to actually take? And then one other additional question with that, does the committee have plans, Madam Chair, to hold any follow-up hearings on this provision and other operational reforms in the bill to make sure that the USPS has the resources and flexibility that they need to actually implement the vision that you both have laid out for them to follow?
I don't mind going first unless the chairwoman wants to go first. It doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
Well, you are correct, Mr. Cole. This was a very important part of the bill for me, is to increase transparency. That's the whole objective for me on the Oversight Committee, to increase transparency, reduce waste, fraud, and abuse. Once the transparency tool is implemented by the bill's May 2023 deadline, Congress and the public will be able to see weekly performance data for specific regions rather than wait for annual performance reports. I'll give you an example. This will help Congress better understand how local mail performance challenges, say due to a regional storm, like we had a devastating tornado go through my congressional district, actually destroyed the post office in Mayfield, Kentucky. Or you could have chronic local mismanagement, which we have cases of that, unfortunately, in different parts of America. This will help local people understand the impact and measure it against the national trends. Then the Oversight Committee can take appropriate oversight action if something is needed. And just with the second question, I'm going to defer to the chairwoman to answer that. She sets the schedule for the Oversight Committee, but let me say this: the U.S. Postal Service has the data which they've been sharing with the committee over the course of the pandemic, and the Postal Service Inspector General has already built a prototype performance transparency tool for their own purposes. So this is something that I can promise you the Republicans on the committee will keep a close eye on. Again, this is full bipartisan support. I'm hopeful that it will continue moving forward. The Postal Service is something that surely to goodness is bipartisan. And, I have to say this too, Mr. Cole, in closing, But from a Republican standpoint, we always say, oh, this government agency or that government agency, including the post office, will run like a business. Well, we've got a business guy in there and he's running it like a business. And he made a lot of reform, a lot of changes initially that he was criticized pretty harshly by a lot of people in Congress. But these reforms are working. The post office is cutting its losses significantly. The performance over the Christmas season was significantly better and right up there with in fact, better than some of the private sector companies that are in the logistics business. So I think this is a good bill, and I'll defer to my chairwoman to answer those questions.
Thank you. Quite frankly, I've been putting most of my energy, focus, and time on trying to pass the bill, trying to knit together all of the agreements and to all the information from CBO and others that will allow us to be before you today. But obviously, we'll continue with oversight. It's part of the jurisdiction of the committee. We'll continue with the oversight of it. But this was a very difficult bill to do because there are many moving parts of it. And we finally decided we just work on what we all agreed on and move out. But a lot of the ideas coming in, we're putting requirements on the post office. You must do X, Y, Z in certain amount of days. And we thought it would be better to just show what's happening and let the post office and the public react to where the mail is particularly slow through this transparent mechanism. And then we would know where to put the resources to find out what's wrong and why we can't move the mail quicker. We thought that this would be a great thing to go forward. It was actually my friend and colleague's idea. I think it's a great one and a great addition to the bill. Another example of how we work together, bringing the best ideas we both had, along with the members that we work with. I'm very proud of this bill. I think it's extremely important. And it's one of these rare moments in public life where you feel like you've got something almost completely good. It's just, it cuts money, improves performance, gets the mail and the medications out to people in a quicker way, moves them to a firmer financial basis, and takes away onerous, really terrible requirements placed on the post office that they really can't handle. It's just a win-win in absolutely every way. And then it literally saves the taxpayer money. So I think it's just a win-win-win, and I hope everyone will join me and Ranking Member Comer in supporting it.
Well, again, I think the two of you have made some very wise decisions. One last question I would direct again to both of you. Obviously, Postmaster General DeJoy laid out his reform plan, I think, Delivering to America, in March of 2021. And I'm just curious how closely the bill lines up with those proposals. Did you find that was a useful way to help you shape the legislation as you move forward? And what's the overlap between those proposals and what you decided made sense legislatively?
Framework of the bill was written by then. It really was. And we've been working on it well over a year. When I retire, I'll teach the politics of the post office. But right now, let's just pass the bill. The politics were so complicated. We just started, my God, we couldn't get anyone to agree. So we finally said, let's take one idea, get everybody to agree, get another idea, get everybody to agree, just building up instead of building down. And everything in it has been agreed to by the prime stakeholders. That's why we are asking that no amendments be added. That doesn't mean that they can't be added in a bill we put in tomorrow that we can discuss and debate thoroughly. But this was very carefully crafted, involving the agreement of the unions, the professionals at the post office, and the members of our committee. It was very, very negotiated in a very long, tedious way. And so it saves money, it delivers mail better, it moves it into the 21st century, it lives up to the requirements of the Constitution. It's an absolute win-win-win. When can we rejoice in the Constitution, save money, improve service? This is a great win. And I think the most remarkable thing about it is that it doesn't even cost money. It saves money. So it's something that I hope everyone can agree on and that we can move off the table into the lives of the American people.
Mr. Culver?
Yeah, thank you. I'll weigh in on that. I mean, as I said earlier, we're already seeing the reforms that Postmaster General DeJoy has put into place. They're working. Performance has significantly increased. The hemorrhaging of cash has been lessened. And, you know, if you look at Christmas, it was much better than expected. I was honestly thinking it might be best to get the postal bill passed before Christmas, to expected the worst with COVID and everything else, but the performance was remarkable during Christmas. I mean, compared to last Christmas. And, you know, under DeJoy's 10-year plan, we're already seeing increases in revenue in their latest financial quarter, which suggests these postal service reform initiatives are already on the right track. I mean, if the post office isn't performing, people aren't going to use the post office, right? They're going to go somewhere else. So it's if there is. And however, our bill has detailed reporting requirements on the key aspects of DeJoy's 10-year plan, which will be due to Congress every 6 months. So that way we know if there's a problem in the post office with revenue projections, with performance, if these cost saving measures aren't working, or if there's any type of trouble, we can try to pass some type of correction. A couple of other things I wanted to say. The chairwoman's mentioned the unions. They've been very involved in this. They've been very supportive of this. They've been very supportive of Postmaster General DeJoy. But there's also a lot of private sector companies that have been involved in this that we've been meeting with. Private sector, big employers that utilize the post office. I mean, every business in America and every individual in America utilizes the post office, but there are some businesses that have a bigger dependency on the post office than others. And they're overwhelmingly supportive of this bill. Another thing I want to say, I talked to Mr. Cole, one of our Republican colleagues, that said, "Well, I just want to privatize the post office." So here, I would privatize everything. I mean, I'm all about privatization. Here's the problem: nobody wants the post office. I mean, they might want the package delivery business in the cities, but nobody's going to do general delivery 6-day mail in rural Oklahoma or rural Kentucky. That's the fact. So there's no talking point to say, well, I want to privatize the post office, because that's not possible. No one has stepped forward saying, I want to deliver mail 6 days a week to every corner of the United States. And so there's nobody that's going to do that. As the chairwoman said, this is in the Constitution. This is a government service, but it's finally being run like a business. The history of this bill, when I first got on the Oversight Committee 5 years ago, Mark Meadows and Elijah Cummings had a postal reform bill, but it was dependent on reforming the post office. And at the time, the Postmaster General came before the committee several times and never could come up with a reform plan. So that bill never went anywhere, because part of the agreement for it to be bipartisan were for reforms to take place. We have a Postmaster General that's been very transparent about the reforms, and they're working. So I think that this is a good bill. I think it's got bipartisan support. This is a service that every American, whether you're conservative or liberal, expects the government to provide, especially in the rural parts of America. So again, I ask for your support and look forward to answering any more questions. I yield back.
Well, just thank again both
Upstate
of
New
you for the
York.
manner in which you.
In upstate New York, we have some areas where literally there are more animals in Stephanic's counties than people, but they have a post office and they walk through the woods and they deliver the mail. It is really a wonderful service when you think about it, that for the same price, that letter can go anywhere in an urban area where there's many people or in very rural areas like Alaska and upstate New York. And when you go to the post office, there's usually a line. That's because they provide an affordable service at a good price, good service. And I must say that I want to publicly thank the workers for working so well through COVID. At some times in my district, half the people were out sick with COVID because they were going into offices and serving people every single day and being exposed. So they did heroic work, and it's time for us to come in and help them modernize and move forward. I think it's a great bill. I want to again thank Representative Comer for his good faith effort and wonderful contributions to the bill. And I join him in asking for a unanimous vote in support of this bill.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I represent one of those districts that has more animals than people, and I can assure you that the animals are happy with the legislation. So it's a good piece of work, and I commend you both. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mrs. Torres.
I have no questions, just complaints, Mr. Chairman, so I will yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Reschenthaler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And I want to thank Chairwoman Maloney and Ranking Member Comer. I'm a co-sponsor of this legislation, so I'm really happy that it's going through. I'm really proud of it. I just want to congratulate both of you on this bipartisan product. With that said, Ranking Member Comer, I wasn't sure if you wanted to maybe talk about just some of the ways this will benefit the user, like particular ways this will benefit the user of the Postal Service.
Well, the user is the taxpayer, and it's very important that the post office, our goal should be as members of Congress to try to make this self-sustaining, and that's what this bill does. We don't want to constantly have to come every Congress and pass some type of postal reform bill. And the transparency aspect of it, to where if you think the mail's bad and you're going to see the report, and if it is bad, if it's bad because you've got a bad mail carrier or a bad postmaster general, this will allow us to be able to fix that. This will be allow us to be able to get rid of a bad actor in the Postal Service. And everybody has bad actors. There are bad actors in every profession. The overwhelming majority of postal employees are outstanding, but there are a few, and I think this will help us to be able to hold anyone accountable that's not performing. It also, you look at the savings standpoint, part of what the Joy has tried to do is cut unnecessary costs. And I'll give you an example. They were using a lot of airplanes to transport mail. At certain times of the year, those airplanes may only have been 10% full, but they were still saying, all right, we're supposed to take off at 4:00 on Monday, whether we've got anything on there or not. And they've tried to switch stuff from air to ground. It's cheaper to do ground. It's much, much cheaper to do ground. And that's why he made a change or two in the performance standards. And they're being very transparent with this. So I think that what people are already seeing is a little better performance. The post office still got a long way to go. I'm not going to say the post office is perfect, because it's not. But I think we've got a situation where we've got someone in that's making the tough decisions, that's trying to cut the cost to try to make it self-sustainable, and looking at it like a business. Okay, we've got to grow our business. So he's got lots of ideas in his reform plan that will grow the business. I mean, every house, every apartment, every dwelling in America has a post office address, whether it's a PO box or a physical address. And he's utilizing the fact that they're going to those places every day. So I think that the users, the people, are going to already see increased performance. They're also going to see savings, to where their tax dollars aren't going to have to be diverted to subsidize the post office. I think that we've still got a long way to go. And with the performance report in here, we'll be able to identify the problem spots. There are certain parts of America where the performance is better than others. And this transparency will allow Congress to come in and fix it. If you're a member of Congress and you get nothing but complaints about the mail in your district, you're going to have these reports. You're going to say, look, there's a problem here. My performance is 20% worse than other parts of America. So I think this is the right step, and we've got the right leadership in place. And hopefully this bill will create an environment to where the post office will be around for a long time.
Thank you. And Chairwoman, before I yield back, would you like to add anything?
Well, there have been some CBO reports that they expect the post office to be out of money in 2024. With this bill, that won't happen. I think we need to pass it immediately and go to work to strengthen the post office and the services to the American people.
Thanks, Chairwoman. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Perlmutter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I want to compliment Mr. Comer and my friend, the chairwoman, for getting a product and accomplishing this. It's been percolating for a very long time, and I appreciate the two of you coming up with a way to get a bill that, you know, you found out what you agreed on, and we're moving forward with that. But I guess I'd say to my friend, Mr. Comer, I'm not quite so optimistic as you are. During my tenure, I never had a single complaint about the post office until about the last 2.5 years. And I've had a bunch, which my post office folks, the letter carriers, the folks working in the post offices are stretched to the max. I mean, they are stretched. We don't have enough personnel. And this is both in the urban, suburban area, as well as up into the mountains that I represent. And I've had complaints now that I never had, you know, for years. And I'm particularly worried about the staffing levels that I see in my area, because, I mean, they try to plug one hole after another, and it's just doesn't seem to be working. So I don't know if this bill addresses staffing levels or not, but that's something that I see is a problem in my area. And I'd ask the chairwoman first, and then Mr. Comer.
This does not address staffing areas. This really focuses on getting them on a firm financial basis, removing burdens, making ways that it can operate. That can be in the next bill, and we invite you to help us write it. But this one is in place now, and we are hoping we can move forward with it and pass it.
The only thing that I can say is, you know, I saw the performance a year ago. It was, especially last Christmas, not last month, but 13 months ago. We had a lot of performance problems, and again, it's still not perfect. But remember, we had COVID, and there were a lot of staff shortages. We got lots of calls from post offices that if you've got a rural post office and you have 7 employees in that post office and 4 of them are out with COVID, then it's going to be a problem there. And even we have a mail sorting facility in Paducah, Kentucky, and they had a COVID outbreak there. And I think that had an impact on the performance too, in my opinion.
So I guess what I'd like the two of you to keep an eye on this particular issue. I don't think it's partially COVID related, but it started beginning right before COVID. We could see these labor shortages starting in the mountains, and now it's spread into the urban suburban area where I had like complaints that I'd never had to deal with before in the mountains. Now it's moved to these other post offices. And so just please keep an eye on that. And I think under your performance transparency thing, and we've tried these performance programs in other areas in government and school districts and all that kind of stuff. And it'll highlight that there's a performance problem. Then you got to figure out what the heck is the performance problem. And in the instance that I think I'm dealing with, it's not enough people, which means more expense. But I don't want to be getting, as none of you do, you know, the calls from upset constituents saying, why the heck am I not getting my mail? And so I just point that out. And then since I've been on this subject up in this committee, and I won't add it as an amendment to your bill, one of the other areas, just to keep this in the back of your mind, when we were trying to get to the bottom of the staffing problems, one of the issues has been you cannot be in the employ of the federal government or the post office if you have any kind of THC or cannabis in your system, and it stays in the system for 30, 60 days sometimes, is what I've been told. And so just to kind of keep that in the back of the mind, in Colorado, that can kind of cut the potential staffing numbers down if you've had, and I can see my friend Mark Desagnier smiling about this, but you know, it is an issue, and I just want to put that into the back of each of your minds. And so appreciate you getting this bill done. Thank you for working together. Good job, and I'll yield back to the chair. And
Thank you.
I'll not listen to my friend Desagnier because he's just going to be obnoxious, and I'm not going to listen to him or even look at him.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fishbach.
Well, and Mr. Chair, I'm just glad that Perlmutter didn't say that about me. So, but
I would never say that about you.
you just save it for the very special people. But you know what, Mr. Chair, I have no questions and I yield back, but I did have to say something about Perlmutter. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'm delighted to support this legislation. I want to thank Chair Maloney and Mr. Comer for their great hard work on this. The legislative package is seaworthy and sturdy, and I'm very glad that they're bringing it forward. We should use it as a moment to celebrate the post office, which over our history has been a central American institution. Of course, it was Ben Franklin who designed the first postal service for the country and was our first Postmaster General appointed at the Second Continental Congress. We have lots of distinguished public figures in addition to Mr. Comer and Ms. Maloney who've been involved in the post office over our history. And it was the post office and the constitutional power to create postal roads, which really helped to create not just the postal system in America, but the communication system and the transportation system, which is why so many of our towns and cities have post roads, and why so many of our great newspapers are called the, you know, like the Washington Post or the Buffalo Courier Express or the Free Express. They were named after the post offices that created the means to have a communication system. And that's how the committees of correspondence got started that made it possible for us to have an American Revolution. So anyway, it is a great institution in our life, and I'm really glad we're coming together on a bipartisan basis to get behind it, to update it, to modernize it. This legislation is going to require future Postal Service retirees who've been paying into Medicare their whole careers to enroll in Medicare. It's going to eliminate that uniquely arduous requirement that the Postal Service pre-fund retiree health benefits for all current and retired employees for 75 years in the future. It's got the public-facing online dashboard that was described with national and local level service performance data updated each week, I think, as Mr. Comer described, to provide transparency and promote compliance with on-time delivery of mail. So again, as public servants, we will be able to monitor the mail in addition to having the ad hoc anecdotal evidence of people calling in to talk about this or that problem. We will be able to actually chart it and where it fits into an overall performance. So anyway, I'm very excited about the Postal Service Reform Act. I'm glad we're able to get it together, to do it together, and it is a model of the kind of bipartisan collaboration we should be involved in. So I thank everybody for their hard work, and I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to give credit to Mr. Perlmutter, who seems to make every single issue a continuous, ongoing advertisement for safe banking. Always appreciate that. But on a serious note, I'm very, very grateful to the distinguished colleague, chair of the committee, and a great New Yorker, Ms. Maloney. Thank you for your leadership, and to Mr. Comer, the ranking member. I am not only proud to be a co-sponsor of the bill, but I very much appreciate the ability of the two of them and their colleagues and their staffs to reach across the aisle to find a compromise on what Mr. Raskin has eloquently described as an American institution that literally hundreds of millions of Americans rely on each day. And so I'm grateful to both of you, and looking forward to be in support of the rule and the underlying legislation. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Mr. DeSanya, will yield to you for any cannabis-related questions.
As a former bartender in San Francisco in the 70s, I won't. But I do want to thank the chairwoman and the ranking member and all the people who worked on this in the oversight committee. I know it's been a lot of work and really good work. And to my friend from Colorado, my facial expression earlier was just a manifestation of my respect and affection. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back because I've got a case of munchies.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I too want to commend the chairwoman and the ranking member. It's always good to see bipartisan work done on behalf of the American people. I just have a few very brief remarks, just to remind everybody that the Postal Service has operated since 1775, predating the founding of our country. And now we are bringing it into the 21st century. And thanks to this act, we'll remove unnecessary pre-funding requirements for the pensions, as you've heard, make employee Medicare plans more efficient, and codify a 6-day-a-week delivery standard. It'll also keep us up to date on operations and financial performance of the post office to enable accountability, cost savings, revenue, and infrastructure investment goals. It will make a difference in the lives of everyday Americans every day. I support the bill, the underlying rule, and urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else on the committee wish to ask a question of the panel? Seeing none, I want to thank Chair Maloney and Ranking Member Comer for your testimony, for all of your hard work. We are grateful, and you can leave. So, is there anyone else wish to testify on HR 3076?
Yeah,
If not, that closes the hearing portion of HR 3076. And let me just say at this point, without objection, the committee is going to stand in recess, subject to the call of the chair. We expect to reconvene around 4:15 to hear testimony on HR 6617, the temporary continuing resolution. So, and then at that point, we will report out the rule for everything. With that, the committee stands in recess. committee will come to order. We will now consider HR 6617, a bill that will keep the federal government funded through March 11. This legislation will allow more time to complete ongoing bipartisan bicameral negotiations on the longer-term FY 2022 appropriations legislation. I will note that the House already did its job in passing 9 appropriation bills over the summer. I'm glad to see Democrats and Republicans on the other side of the Capitol are working with us in crafting a full year omnibus. I'm confident that we can develop something that supports working families, small businesses, our veterans, and our military. So in any event, we are where we are, and hopefully it will buy us the time to do this one more time, but for real. And at this point, I turn it over to the ranking member, Mr. Cole.
Just a quick inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Is Ms. Granger on the line yet?
I saw her. Yeah, I see her. She's there. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right.
Well, I'm sure our distinguished ranking member will speak for me when she speaks. So I'll just wait to hear what she has to say.
Well,
Yield back.
thank you for your opening, and
Probably your favorite opening that I've given
one
so
of the
far
better
this
ones, yeah.
Congress.
And I'd like to welcome our witnesses to provide testimony on HR 6617, the Further Additional Extending Government Funding Act. Chairwoman DeLauro and Ranking Member Granger, we are delighted that you are here. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Chairwoman DeLauro.
Thank you very, very much, Chairman McGovern and Ranking Member Cole and the members of the committee. First of all, many thanks. My train just arrived and dashed here, so I apologize for having to have you reconvene, but I'm much, much appreciative. I would have preferred to be sitting before you to present a fiscal year 2022 omnibus, but I believe we are very close to an agreement, and I am eager to move this process forward. I have every expectation that we can finalize an omnibus in short order. The American people deserve the certainty that comes with full year funding bills. The transformative investments an omnibus provides will help create good paying jobs and grow opportunity for the middle class. Taken together, an omnibus will expand access to childcare, strengthen our public schools, make college more affordable, bolster job training, and help small businesses access the capital they need to thrive. And it will rebuild our public health care systems after the devastation of the pandemic. An omnibus will confront the climate crisis by supporting environmental protection, land conservation, and clean energy development. And it will protect our national security and restore America's place in the world. What's more, an omnibus is the only way to unlock the full potential of the transformative funding in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, accelerating the rebuilding of our nation's crumbling roads, bridges, water systems, and other critical transportation infrastructure. And of great importance to the people that we represent, an omnibus is the only way to enact community project funding that my colleagues on both sides of this dais have requested for their districts. From bolstering mental and behavioral health services to helping veterans find jobs, these investments, which are being made with strong community support, are so important. I am confident that appropriators can agree on a framework in short order and then work with great intensity to fill in the details so that we can enact an agreement that is worthy of the people we are here to serve. To provide the time to get that work done, the Further Additional Extending Government Funding Act before you continues government funding at current levels through March 11th. This legislation is straightforward and includes minimal anomalies, the most notable of which is $350 million in direly needed funding to address water contamination from the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility in Hawaii. No one wins from additional continuing resolutions, which is why after we pass this extension, we will finalize an omnibus that will deliver for our nation. I respectfully request an appropriate rule for floor consideration of this legislation. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Granger.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman McGovern and Ranking Member Cole. for allowing me to testify on this bipartisan short-term continuing resolution. I'm disappointed that we're discussing another CR and not full-year appropriations bill. It was my hope that by now we would have finalized our work for fiscal year 2022. While conversations are ongoing, we need more time to complete our work. No one wants to have a CR, but the alternative is much worse. If we don't pass a CR by next week, we could have an unnecessary and costly government shutdown. I think both sides agree that that would be disastrous, especially for our national security. This bill keeps the government open for another 3 weeks and ensures the constant continuation of basic federal responsibilities such as national defense, border security, and care for our veterans. I'm hopeful that this CR will give us time to work out our differences and pass bipartisan full-year bills. We'll not be able to achieve this goal unless we find consensus on spending levels, and we know that controversial policies have been dropped. I've been very clear about what House Republicans need to support a final project. If we will not support partisan bills that include irresponsible spending increases or extreme policies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Well, thank you very much. You both convinced me that we need to do this, so I have no questions. Mr. Cole.
Well, first of all, I want to say what a pleasure it is, even remotely, to be with the chair and the ranking member. And I'm heartened that the discussions are continuing. I think the outline on our side, our position's been pretty clear. We think the defense number needs to go up to at least what has been authorized by both the Senate and the House Armed Services committees. I think we're pretty firm on our side that the domestic number needs to come down. The poison pills, as the ranking member pointed out, need to come out. And frankly, just to be very specific, I don't think there'd be any Republican support for a final decision if the Hyde legislations and protections that have historically been there are not restored. So again, I think the outlines of a deal have been there for a long time. And I just want to commend both the chair and the ranking member for continuing to work. I associate myself with the ranking member's remarks. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Torres.
No comments, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Reschenthaler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to associate my remarks with the ranking member and say thanks to both chairwoman and ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, the other committee I'm on, thank you for coming in today, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Perlmutter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Gives me another opportunity to talk about safe banking. And I was looking through the CR and I saw anomaly for a submarine. I saw anomaly for cleaning up the water in Honolulu, but I didn't see safe banking. And so I was just curious if the two of you forgot about that or what, but I won't belabor the subject. I'm not going to try to add it to this, but don't be surprised if on some appropriation bill in the very near future, you see me try to amend on safe banking. And I appreciate you guys getting this done. Let's get the overall bill passed, and that I yield back.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fishbach.
Mr. Chair, I have no questions and I yield back.
Hey, Mr. Raskin.
I've got no questions. Just want to thank the chair and the ranking member for their presentations.
Thank you. Ms. Scanlon.
I would echo Mr. Raskin's remarks. Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Ranking Member, for your work.
Mr. Morelli.
I will simply say ditto. I associate myself with the two previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeSaulnier.
No, nothing, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thrilled that we're having such a bipartisan committee meeting today, and I yield back.
I don't see Mr. Neguse. No, okay. Did I miss anybody? Did any member of the committee have any questions for this panel? Hear none, you're free to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any other members who wish to testify on HR 6617? Seeing none, this closes the hearing on HR 6617. At this time, the chair will be in the, will entertain a motion from the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Chairman, thanks so much. I move the committee report a structured rule for consideration of HR 3076, the Postal Service Reform Act of 2021. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate on the bill, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Reform or their designees. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 11732 shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. The rule makes in order the further amendment printed in the Rules Committee report, if offered by the member designated in the report, which shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment printed in the report. The rule provides one motion to recommit. The rule also provides for consideration of HR 6617, the further additional extending government funding act under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate on the bill, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their designees. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the bill shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill. The rule provides one motion to recommit. The rule provides that House Concurrent Resolution 69 is hereby adopted. Finally, the rule provides that for purposes of the joint session to receive the President of the United States on March 1, 2022, former members, delegates, and resident commissioners shall not be admitted to the hall of the House or rooms leading thereto.
Okay, you heard the motion from the gentleman from Maryland. Is there any amendment or discussion? Hearing none. Now the vote is on the motion of the gentleman from Maryland. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
how is Mr. Morelli recorded?
He's recorded the same way as everybody else was. So Mr. Raskin will handle it for the Democrats? And for the Republicans, who will?
No, Mr. Reschenthaler will handle it for the Republicans.
Mr. Reschenthaler will handle it for the Republicans. So, oh, by the way, the ayes have it and the motion is agreed to. So I just wanted to make sure I get that on the record here. So without objection, the committee is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.